The biggest card in YouTube boxing is coming soon, the Prime card, headlined by KSI and co-featuring Logan Paul. This could easily be the highest grossing event ever put on in this entire crossover boxing scene. So in this video, I'll be giving you guys my hopes, my predictions, and pretty much just building this card. So right away we know that this looks to be the Prime card with KSI and Logan Paul, with it being teased back on Misfits 008 to be happening on October 14th, with the fights looking like KSI versus Tommy Fury and Logan Paul versus Dillon Danis. And that's pretty much all we know. This was verbally agreed to happen in Manchester, which is Tommy Fury's hometown and pretty much where this whole thing started, where KSI fought Logan Paul back in 2018, where Deji fought Jake Paul in the undercard. That all happened in Manchester in the UK, and it looks like we're going back. KSI versus Tommy Fury, I don't really see any issues happening with, but for Logan Paul versus Dillon Danis, I feel like a pullout could definitely be possible. Dillon Danis is very unreliable. He pulled out against KSI on the 4th Misfits show earlier this year. It's hard to see him even getting into the ring, so to book him against Logan Paul is kind of a risky move. I feel like they may need some other guys to be on standby for Logan. And for Logan, I feel like a good option would be Salt Poppy. One kind of out of the left field, but Salt Poppy is also a southpaw similar to Dillon Danis. He's around the same height as him. So let's say Logan Paul's been training for Dillon Danis for months, and then obviously Dillon pulls out. He'd probably still want to go against a southpaw, considering that's what his whole training camp was going up against. This is pretty much what happened to KSI back in January when he fought FaZe Temper instead of Dillon Danis. Dillon pulled out about 10 days before the fight, and in came FaZe Temper, another southpaw. Honestly, could be another option for Logan. He kind of is around that weight. He said he wants to move up in weight, probably fight a 185 to 190 range, which I feel like Logan would be fighting at 190 anyway, so that could match up. So those two, Salt Poppy and FaZe Temper, could make sense for Logan Paul. Obviously, they both also have a big draw. FaZe Temper with the FaZe Clan backing, and Salt Poppy with just the Filipino crowd. And even though he lost to Anthony Taylor, he is still a big draw in this scene, and this would give him a huge opportunity against Logan. And they're also winnable fights for Logan. We've just seen both of them coming off a loss. So while it's not ideal if/when Dillon doesn't make it, those two can definitely be some decent options. And just another big name, which is really what Logan wants to do. He doesn't really care about fighting the toughest guys in the scene. He just wants to put on the biggest shows, which is what this event will definitely be. But now for what we don't know about this card, some hypothetical matchups. And another guy that kind of has that Prime name attached to him and could potentially make his way onto this card is Gideon. He's been saying for years now that he wants to get into the boxing ring, and a Prime card would be perfect for that. He's kind of an ambassador for Prime. He's a creator for them with KSI and Logan Paul. He was calling out Joe Weller about a year ago, but that fight never ended up happening. It doesn't seem like Joe's really interested in that one. But regardless, Gideon would be a huge name to add to this card. I feel like something that is really lacking right now is the addition of some fresh faces, some big names. The scene started off huge. We had KSI, Logan Paul, Jake Paul. We've had a couple big additions here and there, but I feel like some fresh faces like a Gideon would definitely be really refreshing to bring in more of the modern YouTube audience and generation. I feel like Deji versus Alex Wasabi, the rematch, has to get made. Deji has recently been finding redemption. He's been getting win after win. He beat Fuzi, he beat Swarms, he fought Floyd Mayweather in between. Obviously, he lost that one. But he's finally at a point now in boxing where he's confident in his abilities. He's actually winning some fights. And in his first 3 fights, he came up short. He lost to all of them. And pretty much the biggest rivalry that he had there was Alex Wasabi, who he could definitely be looking to get his own back in that one. He lost a split decision in his hometown, which the fight wasn't even all that close, but now Deji has improved. He's been winning. Alex has kind of been inactive. He was scheduled to fight KSI and obviously had to pull out of that one. Then he fought iDubbbz and beat him in a majority decision, so it'd be interesting to see that Deji versus Alex fight run back. But when talking some more hypothetical matchups that could potentially get made, Slim versus Blueface is one that I would definitely like to see. A lot of people have been talking about Slim versus Salt Poppy, but Slim hasn't really shown any interest in that one, and he has shown interest in fighting Blueface. This is one that I could see being a fight of the night, both guys that are long, tall, rangy, and like to get in a dogfight. And another rematch, I know I'm talking about a couple rematches right now, but Dean the Great versus Waleed Sharks. This could either be its own main event and potentially a non-pay-per-view card, or could be on the undercard of this one. A huge rivalry that has been brewing for a long time, and obviously that first fight was very closely contested. Back and forth between both guys, and I could definitely also see them getting pro licenses in the UK. Some other big names, if Misfits is really looking to go all out on this card, could be some big name streamers like Kai Cenat, maybe Aiden Ross. Match him up with like a FaZe Rug or something. That would definitely be interesting to see. There's a lot of big names in the influencer world that would probably want an opportunity to get on this card. Anthony Taylor. Even a rematch like Salt Poppy versus Anthony Taylor could be something interesting to see on this card. I'm sure they may even be looking at some crossover boxers such as MMA fighters, big name boxers, because that'd definitely be a good way to attract a different audience. Let's say they get like a Jose Aldo to fight Dean the Great, maybe even Mike Perry to be the backup for Tommy Fury if that falls through. The scene now has so many different fighters, so many different contenders. The Kingpin tournament will probably be done by then, but I'm not sure if that turnaround will be a bit too quick for them. Like potentially Jarvis or Whindersson Nunes, King Kenny, or Nissan Gibb, one of them may want to get on this card. But the finals for that will probably be around September, so it'd probably be too quick of a turnaround. Really, there's just so many possibilities. There's a lot of big fights to make and a lot of big names. If there are any gimmicks, I could see a tag team potentially happening. maybe even a mystery opponent, but I don't see them like testing out a new gimmick on the biggest card that they have. They'd probably stick with one that already works, which the tag team or mystery opponent are the ones that they have used so far. Potentially, if not Deji versus Alex Wasabi, we could have Alex Wasabi team up with Nick Lamau, who've been saying they want to have a tag team for quite a while now. And Deji can maybe even fight Bryce Hall, who's been saying he wants to fight Deji after his bare knuckle fight. There's so many matchups, so many possibilities, potentially a little bit of hurdles in the way. But a big problem for this card could potentially be the sanctioning. This is potentially going to be a professional licensed card by the British Boxing Board of Control, which may mean that this card may have less influencers because they'd all need pro licenses in the UK, which are definitely harder to get than the US. If the whole card was sanctioned by the British Boxing Board of Control, then that would mean there would be no gimmick fights. Probably not a lot of influencers. The only ones I could really see getting a license would be like KSI, Tommy Fury, Logan, maybe Dillon, and then like Dean the Great and Waleed Sharks. But I'm assuming they maybe get past that issue by potentially sanctioning with the PBA, or at least for some of the fights on the card like the influencers. Another thing that could get in the way is the budget. Misfits Boxing are not like a lot of these other YouTube boxing events who are just going to throw around millions at other guys. They have a strict and set budget set by DAZN, and they can't just be throwing around millions at everyone. So it's hard to get every single big name that you would want, but since this will be a huge card, it will give guys huge opportunities. So a lot of people will probably still want to be on it from the influencer boxing side because it's one of the biggest cards of the year, if not the biggest card. I mean, you have KSI and Logan Paul as main and co-main event. This will be a huge card. Tommy Fury's main eventing with KSI. Tommy Fury just beat Jake Paul. He brings the boxing side with him. Dillon Danis is on the card. He brings the MMA side with him, so it's a huge card. But seeing as Misfits also plan to have a couple more cards this year, I can't really see them using all the big names on one card. I feel like they can showcase some lesser names and probably give them opportunities on like the prelims. Considering that this is a pay-per-view though, I'm sure this budget will definitely be really big, especially with how well it probably is projected to do. The main and co-main event itself would already be huge. But regardless, this will easily be the biggest modern YouTube boxing card to date. Up there with the KSI versus Logan Paul cards, potentially even bigger considering KSI and Logan Paul are now such big names. Even compared to back then, they've only grown since then, but they aren't fighting each other, which was a big rivalry for back then especially. And it was new, it was just getting introduced to us, and now they're fighting Dillon Danis and Tommy Fury. Still, I feel like this will be a huge card. Mans Taylor, Kyle Sauerland, they've been saying this card will be historical. So they're probably going to pull all the stops on this one and make the biggest Misfits event. So a realistic card, in my opinion, would be KSI versus Tommy Fury, Logan Paul versus Dillon Danis, Gideon versus like a Joe Weller, a Deji versus Alex Wasabi rematch, Slim versus Blueface, Dean the Great versus Waleed Sharks rematch. And that's pretty much it for the main card. That might even be a little bit too stacked for this one. But I do think Misfits are going to go all out. They're going to put as much as they can into this, do everything they can to make it sanctioned properly, everything work well, smoothly, and overall just give everyone a huge night to remember. Misfits 009 is building to be one of the biggest cards we've ever seen. I'm definitely excited for it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What matchups would you like to see happen on the card? I'm probably missing a lot of dream fights that you guys would like to see, so leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. And on the topic of this card, check out some of my videos on why Logan Paul versus Dillon Danis will not be close and why KSI cannot lose to Tommy Fury.